wanna focus. Fantasy focus.
We're having a dance-off here in studio because of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. I am Field. That right there, you are Mike Clay.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I actually brought some guests with me.
You brought some guests? Tell us about your guests.
I did. I brought Zach Novak.
Okay.
He is the current iRacing champion, or the peak antifreeze iRacing champion. Only 17 years old. Sitting back in the studio there. You can see him waving if you're watching the feed there behind Not Cool Keith. So congratulations to Zach.
Congratulations
Took home a big prize a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And his sister is here as well today.
Yeah, I was getting there. His sister Kelsey is here as well. Zach actually doesn't have his actual driver's license, so Kelsey had to drive him here today. So he's
Wait a second.
That's something I would do, by the way.
The juxtaposition here of him winning the iRacing championship but doesn't have his driver's license is a very cool thing I think we should focus more on.
He's so big time. He has a driver. I guess that's what's happening here, right?
Sort of reminds me of me. You know that? I have won every fantasy football league that I've ever played in, and I never played it down in the NFL. So Zach and I are basically the same person. I've literally never lost a fantasy football matchup to Matthew Berry. It's never happened. By the way, the great, incomparable, always delightful Stephania Bell is here today as well. Good morning.
Wow. What an intro.
Yeah.
And here I was going to give you guys grief, but I was just going to say I wasn't champion of anything at 17. Like, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
you're a very good mathlete.
That's a good question now. Okay, so 17-year-old Field Yates wins $40,000. What are you doing with it? What are you spending on?
Clothes,
polos, shades.
Totally was
down
clothes.
payment on your
next pair of docksiders. Yeah.
How about Stephania?
Honestly, I would be spending it on new lax swag. I mean, I was still a lacrosse player through my college days, and lacrosse is the ultimate swag sport, right?
Okay.
So you used to have to have. I had a lot of football gear too, but during my time working for teams, I collected so much stuff. Like there was a time where when I was working for teams, actually when I was working with the Patriots during my high school and college years, where like I'd walk into fall camp with like 30 pairs of cleats. My team would be like, "What is wrong with you?" I'd be like, "Well,"
he's like, "Well, if you ever need someone on the practice squad."
Well, no, what happens? Like seriously, not only that, but like NFL players go through like a pair of cleats a day. So some wide receiver who was comparable in shoe size to me would like wear a pair for a day and be like, "I'm going to throw these out. Do you want them?" And I'd say, "You're not going to throw them out because I do want them, and I'm going to have more swag than anybody else on the team." Or at least in my mind, I had as much swag as anybody else on the team. So good to have Zach here, good to have Kelsey here, and always good to have Stephania here. Let's get to the football.
Rewind. Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
Patriots traded for Mohamed Sanu on Tuesday morning. Yesterday, Josh Gordon was placed on injured reserve. So Josh Gordon, who has missed the past game, because of a knee injury that was suffered 2 games ago on Thursday night. Many might remember that game against the Giants. Tom Brady was strip sack. Josh Gordon ran down the defender, almost made a tackle, and his knee kind of buckled. It was one of those that looked bad at the time, but perhaps there was a bit more favorable prognosis. In the end, the Patriots placed him on IR. Now, Josh Gordon has been placed on IR. That does not mean that his season is necessarily over. This is getting into the weeds a little bit, but when you're placed on IR, there is a chance that a team and a player on IR could negotiate what is called an injury settlement that essentially says, I am not able to play for a predetermined number of weeks. Let's just arbitrarily call it 4. After 4 weeks, I will be healthy enough to play football, but the team has the ability to put a player on IR because it's roster management. So after 4 weeks, that player... So he's paid for 4 weeks, and then he basically becomes a free agent and could sign somewhere else. He could sign somewhere before those 4 weeks are over, but anyways, there's some health considerations to be taken in. All I'm saying is that the door is open to Josh Gordon playing for somebody else later on this season. We're a couple of steps away from that right now. The reason why I mention it is that some people, when they see a player goes to IR, their first inkling is, okay, fine, drop him. Put him on the waiver wire. I'll go grab somebody else. As a matter of fact, I had people yesterday, I was thinking about, do I drop Josh Gordon to roster somebody else in the War Room League? This would be a case where I would say to you, we may get information at some point in the next week that tells you you're fine to drop Josh Gordon. But for now, stand by with Josh Gordon, because I think there's at least a chance we might find out, hey, later on this season, you get a nice little December ad. But is it safe to drop him? Is it fine to drop him? Yes. Do you have to? No.
Yeah, I dropped him in a 10-teamer. I think in a 12-teamer, I'd think about it. If I had another speculative young wide receiver or running back out there and I wanted to add them to my bench instead, a guy that could potentially help me in the short term, it could be Raekwon Armstead. I mean, what if Leonard Fournette gets hurt this week?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of options out there. I dropped him. I have no problem with it. Yes, he might get claimed. He could get claimed by a bad team. He could be dealing with injuries. He could not see enough of a role to be a top 30 fantasy receiver. There's a lot of things. There's probably more things that could go wrong for him to be a weekly fantasy starter than could go right going forward. So I don't think he's a must-hold by any means. If there's somebody out there you want to scoop up, I would go for it.
The Mohamed Sanu trade seems to have a little bit more to it now, as we just referenced. It took place on Tuesday. I don't think the Patriots knew at that time that Josh Gordon was going to end up on IR, but this does not hurt the value for Mohamed Sanu, Mike. I said yesterday I was a little bit more bullish, actually on Tuesday when Matthew and I first examined it. So knowing now that Josh Gordon won't be there for New England, how much does that change the projection for Mohamed Sanu in your eyes?
Well, I would say this. There's probably a clip out there of everything I said yesterday about this situation. You can just ignore everything I said about the situation because with no Josh Gordon, it's completely different, right? I was worried about kind of overcrowding there in terms of targets. You had a lot of mouths to feed, but now you could see the path to a full-time role here for Mohamed Sanu because you have Julian Edelman, who's going to play outside more often. He's done that before. He's played like 50-50, and they'll use multiple guys in the slot. That's fine. You'll have Mohamed Sanu, who his entire career has only played in the slot. It's sometimes in 12 he'll play outside, but almost always inside. And then Philip Dorsett is primarily a perimeter guy as well. So there's a path for him to play every down. I think he's a top 40 fantasy receiver. Not going to get you a lot of touchdowns, most likely. It's just not the way he's utilized, but there's a path to wide receiver 3 production. And by the way, in Atlanta, he's been wide receiver 29 and 31 the past 2 seasons. So it's not like he's a stranger to producing like that. Now he's in an even better offense.
Yeah, I say, well, at least a better role for him, right? Because he's not the third wide receiver. You can make the case that Atlanta's offense,
Probably
from a fantasy perspective, was more high potency than the Patriots' offense this year. It's just that their team is not nearly as good. I am predicting this right now, Daniel, and those who are also on the committee of board bets for the 06-010. What are the chances that Matthew looks to rectify the bet that we made about Mohamed Sanu on Tuesday? He's going to try to weasel his way out of that one, isn't he?
Well,
I said top 30 for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I believe it was it week 10 on?
It was from week 11 on.
Okay, I think we built in a buffer for him to learn the offense, and then it was for the rest of the season.
I don't think that it changes anything. I mean, you made the bet with the way the things were. If Josh Gordon were to get hurt next week and go on IR, then that's part of the bet.
All right, so here's the deal. No one tell him this. No one tweet at him. No one say a thing to Matthew about, hey, you should find a way to weasel your way out of that board bet. Let's just wait and see what happens. So if Mohamed Sanu, let's say Mohamed Sanu has 5 catches for 70 yards on Sunday, which is possible. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but it's possible. And on Monday, we're talking about, hey, Mohamed Sanu looked pretty good in that Patriots debut. Watch Matthew say something like, I'm going to try to wiggle my way out of that one. I'm calling it right now.
He won't actually say, I'm going to try and wiggle my way out. He'll just say, well, when we made the board bet.
He'll caveat the crap out of it's what's going to happen. He will try his best, his darndest to get out of it. So to recap, we think the value of Mohamed Sanu reaffirmed, a guy that probably should be in your lineup as soon as this weekend. Quick study, a guy that he's not just a good player, very mature, very well-respected, smart player, and the kind of guy that I don't think they have too many concerns about him getting up to speed rather quickly. Speaking of rather quickly type of things, Stephania, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Wait, the guy that it looked awful last Thursday night. Yesterday,
he dislocated his kneecap.
And he's practicing yesterday.
Yeah, 6 days before he returned to practice. And I think we're all surprised. I mean, it was certainly big news when everybody saw him on the practice field yesterday, given the fact that there was sort of floating in the ether that it was a multi-week injury. And that's, typically how things go. Andy Reid told reporters ahead of time, look, we're going to get him out there, let him move around and do some things. I mean, it was pretty vague, just kind of see how he responds. And basically, from a medical standpoint, if the player is functionally doing well, there is not an arbitrary reason to keep them from practicing. Keep in mind, he's got the ankle to go along with this knee. So he did very limited work. If you looked at what Adam Teicher reported, who covers the Chiefs for us, he was 4th in a line of 4 quarterbacks doing individual drills. He did some handoffs in the portion that was open to the media. He made a couple throws. This is not really testing the legs, so to speak, but allowing him to get mental reps and keep his hand on the ball. And I think all of that is important. I still think it's a stretch for this week, but we will see. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it certainly feels like a stretch to me as well this week. I think we mentioned this previously on the show, but they promoted Kyle Shurmur, the son of Pat Shurmur, the Giants head coach, to their active roster. He looks likely to be the backup to Matt Moore on Sunday night against the Packers.
Chad Henne was back in practice yesterday and could be activated off IR, I think, as early as next week. So.
I think it might be one more week after that for Chad Henne, because I think is it 2 weeks after you begin practicing? Anyways, you're right, Stephania. There is a chance that
you have like
Matt Moore might go from starter to off the team in like 3 weeks, because not many teams like to carry 3 quarterbacks on their 53-man active roster. Mike, safe to say Patrick Mahomes is a hold as well in 10-team leagues?
Yes.
Okay.
I had to think about it for half a second.
Drop him.
Yeah,
Mike Clay, the
Unless you're
best
like a
in the
two-team
business
league.
for many reasons. All right, let's get right now to it. Our game preview.
I lost the button on the board.
See what happens when you take a
Game preview.
There we go. It's no longer preseason for Daniel. He is in regular
Jackson's
season
moving
mode.
everything on me. He's trying to take my job.
Wow.
That's what it
We
is.
talked about this
You know what I mean?
yesterday.
All right, Matthew,
threw you right under
throwing
the
a
bus.
coworker
That's
under
exactly
the bus.
what it is.
You know something?
Yeah.
I don't think the 06-0-0 knows a ton about Jackson. I think they're learning about Jackson on the fly, and we've discovered some things recently that he's got some skills that are very important and useful. Like he's built this cool banner.
He did.
For the Fantasy Focus Twitter page. Go check that out.
Jackson's pretty dope. I mean, even though he's trying to take my job, I will say I think he's a really
Jackson, do
good
you have
addition
Twitter?
to the team.
Does he have Twitter? Does he have his own Twitter?
What is
He
it?
does have his own Twitter. It's at Jackson Ajello, which isn't the correct way to pronounce it.
Come on,
but-
we already had this. What is this nonsense? Like
Jackson
Ajello? It's
Ajello. It's
Like
Aiello.
Jackson.
Aiello. Although you know what,
Jello.
one of my best friends from college who listens to this podcast frequently, Nick Ajello. So shout out to all the Ajellos out there. Maybe recently married too. Congrats, bud. Maybe you guys are cousins. You just don't even realize it.
Yeah, it could be distant cousins. Yeah.
He's like signing. He's like
He's
a
so
mime
good.
right
He's
now,
good at a
like
lot of
behind the
stuff.
glass. So,
All right, let's talk
Jackson,
about something
shout out to you.
worthwhile.
Let's talk-
The Redskins.
I was going to say, where are you going then? We begin now with the Redskins, who go to Minnesota. They're only 16-point underdogs in this game for the Redskins. It's maybe more of who is playing versus or who's not. Maybe who is playing versus who's not playing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of injuries to get to. Chris Thompson already ruled out, right, Stephania?
Yes, Chris Thompson out. And Adrian Peterson is really who's going to run the ball? And Adrian Peterson dealing with an ankle issue after dealing with a quad contusion a week ago. The Redskins did not practice on Monday or Tuesday, and he was listed as a limited participant on Wednesday. So, they didn't practice Monday or Wednesday. So the only day that they really held a practice, he did not participate. But I think they trust him at this point. You know, the guy's 34 years old, but every time he says, I'm good to go, they're like, okay, yes, you are. So I think the expectation, he has said that he feels like he can play. The expectation is he'll probably get the green light tonight.
Well, Mike, he might get the green light, but is it worth having the green light for him in your fantasy lineup against a really good Vikings run defense?
It depends if you're into revenge game narratives.
Okay.
I mean, he's going against his old Vikings teammates.
He sure is, yeah.
Probably very few of his teammates. But anyway, I don't think so. I'm actually a little bit higher than you guys. I'm at RB 33, but still, that makes him maybe a flex option if you're shaky. Maybe in non-PPR leagues you're more interested. But here's the thing. 43 carries over the past 2 weeks, 81-plus yards rushing in both of those. It's pretty good, but one was Miami, where they were it was a close game, and then San Francisco in that sloppy game last week where both teams just ran the ball as much as possible. The first 4 games he played this season, under 40 yards in both of them. He only has 2 targets during his past 4 games. He's been RB 37 or worse in 4 of his 6 games this season. And, he's playing the Vikings, who are terrific against running backs. 5th fewest fantasy points allowed, only 1 touchdown. They're 10th or better in pretty much every category against running backs. So I would not feel comfortable starting.
And the Vikings are probably going to put us some numbers, I'm thinking. So, Washington's going to have to throw the ball a little bit more here. It's not a great outlook for.
A lot of things are shaping up poorly for the Redskins tonight. I know Wendell Smallwood has a chance to potentially play a little bit for them. He's got 13 carries for 58 yards this season, and with Chris Thompson out, that would be it would be a desperate play. I've learned now that to avoid saying things like you have absolutely no room for a player in your lineup because weird stuff happens in fantasy football, but I'm telling you that it will be a very desperate play, and if it works out in your favor, I would like to take you to Las Vegas at some point in the near future. We'll go make ourselves plenty of money and retire from having to do anything that involves any sort of risk whatsoever going forward. But he is sort of the backup running back right now alongside Adrian Peterson. There's really only one other player that we need to talk about with the Redskins on offense, and he might be the most fantasy useful right now. That's Terry McLaurin. So McLaurin has been awesome in games you expect him to be awesome, and then limited in games you expect him to be limited, specifically against the Patriots and the 49ers. Mike, how much confidence do you have in Terry McLaurin tonight against what is also a good, this is not to be messed around with Viking secondary?
It is. I mean, there's talent there, but they've given up a lot of fantasy production, so we could start there. I mean, they've actually, again, struggled against the pass this season. 6th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers so far. 105 receptions already allowed to receivers. It's 2nd most. 11 receiving touchdowns. That's 3rd most just to receivers. A 71% catch rate. 12 end zone targets. Both of those are 6th highest. So if you're a wide receiver, you have produced against the Vikings so far. And Terry McLaurin.
What do we attribute that to? I mean, Xavier Rhodes has not played like Xavier Rhodes. They've been dealing with some injuries. Mike Hughes, first-round pick last year, came back into the lineup. But it's odd to hear them be so generous to opposing wide receivers.
Yeah,
so
they're
far.
rotating a lot of guys into the slot. They've had some injuries there for sure. Trey Waynes hasn't been quite as good as he was in the second half last season. So I think they're just underperforming. And they're also, they're running the ball ahead, a lot, but they're ahead. Teams are throwing against them. And that's going to be the case here, too. Washington's going to have to throw the football. And we've seen the Keenum-McLaurin connection have some success this season. In fact, you look at the games against the 49ers and Patriots, I'm told they have good defenses this season.
Yeah, they do.
Can you confirm that? He was bad in those, right? 2 duds in that. Obviously, the last week's was
sloppy.
Very rainy, too. You can't really fault him for that. Otherwise, though, he has scored a touchdown in all 4 of his other games this season and has 7+ targets and 62+ receiving yards in all of those games. So, again, aside of bizarre circumstances or really tough circumstances against the Patriots, he has been really successful. A 26% target share as well is actually up from early season since he came back from the injury. So really a lot to like here. I know the Redskins offense is low volume and not scoring points, but he's the offense essentially right now in the passing game. I think he'll be fine.
When people ask you, why are you watching a game like the Redskins that involves the Redskins offense, F1 or Scary Terry or whatever you want to call him, Terry McLaurin is the reason why.
Maybe Case Keenum has a revenge game in him too.
That's a good point.
Mean,
but Kirk Cousins could as well. So there's a lot going on
There's
here.
high drama.
Too much revenge.
It's
a good thing the World Series isn't on tonight. Can you imagine what it would be like if there was the Nationals game opposite this Redskins game tonight?
I know. It'd be tough to
Don't
predict.
want to ask that question. Do you guys ever feel like ticketing websites make getting to the event difficult on purpose? It's as if they're so big they can get away with not caring about the customer experience. The real question is how easy it could be if those ticketing sites actually cared. With millions of live events and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves there's a better way. Search sports, live music, comedy, and more because SeatGeek has the tickets you're looking for all in one place, including to The Lion King last night. Had just a delightful evening with my mom, Chapin. We had a blast, and I love the amount of effort and perfection that those performers put into every single show that they take part in. SeatGeek pulls millions of tickets together from all over the web. Then it rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10. Finally, SeatGeek displays them on an interactive seat map, and SeatGeek breaks down the details. Green dots mean good deals. Red dots are overpriced. And every purchase is fully guaranteed so you can shop for tickets with confidence and know that you're getting the best deal possible when you are heading over to whatever opportunity it is that you have, including, like I said, The Lion King in Boston, only available until October 27th. So any of my friends that are listening from Boston, get down over to Downtown Crossing. SeatGeek will even take $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. Download the SeatGeek app today and use that promo code of FFF for $10 off on your first purchase. That's promo code FFF for $10 off on your first purchase. The revenge game narratives continue, as you guys mentioned just a moment ago, as Kirk Cousins plays his former team, the Washington Redskins. Stephania and I have him as a top 10 play with over 975 passing yards over the last 3 games, plus 10 touchdowns. Mike, you're actually a little bit less optimistic. In the 10-team league, you're not starting Kirk Cousins.
I am not.
The issue there?
I'm not. I'm at QB 12. Look, he's been red hot the past 3 weeks, no doubt. But here's the thing. They have played the Lions, the Eagles, and the Giants. They are number 3, 5, and 8 in terms of passing yards allowed so far this season. So he is
What are the Redskins?
They are mid-pack. They're mid-pack against quarterbacks so far this season. high in interceptions. They have allowed 14 passing touchdowns, so obviously you like that. But again, if you kind of work out,
Hold on.
Wait, did you just go there?
Obviously,
You
What?
like that?
obviously what? Obviously,
You like that?
you like,
you like that?
I didn't even realize I said it. See?
Wow.
I'm
Oh,
not-
my God,
I'm not
Mike.
tip top today.
Listen, you're nervous. You've got a guest in the show today. You're
That's
nervous.
it. I missed it. I
Try it
missed
one more time.
I'm embarrassed.
Obviously.
Obviously, you like that.
Ooh, Mike, that was terrible.
Okay.
Come on.
You like that? It's got to be more guttural.
Yeah, come on.
Get in there. Like, pretend like you're pointing the camera. Your finger right there.
I want to see it one more time.
You ready?
Yeah.
Wait, if I look at Daniel, I can
There
get
you go.
angry.
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. Ready?
Yeah.
You like that?
You like that? That was good.
Love it.
That was
That was
really
good, Mike. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
you.
Love you.
Prison Mike knows how to yell.
Yeah, he does. It just Daniel makes me angry. Anyway, can we talk Kirk Cousins?
Someone give me my toothbrush shank. That's basically what it is.
Yes, we should talk Kirk Cousins.
So anyway, the Lions, the Eagles, and the Giants can't stop the pass, so he beat up on them. Otherwise, averaging 244 passing yards a game and 27 pass attempts, actually including those games. The Vikings are the second run-heaviest offense in the NFL. Teams run against the Redskins because they're not very good and they're ahead in
Right.
games. That should be the case here. The Vikings are 16-point favorites in this game. So, yes, Cousins has been top 10 the past 3 weeks. He was 22nd or worse weeks 1 through 4. They're still a run-heavy team. The Redskins are mid-pack against quarterbacks. I think that's going to be a low-volume game
I'm
here.
feeling the screen pass to Dalvin Cook play happening a lot.
Oh.
So I'm going to get me some Kirk Cousins points and some Dalvin Cook.
Well, Dalvin Cook,
Okay.
obviously a must start. We have him as a consensus top 2 play this week. They will not have Adam Thielen out there, though, Stephania.
No, and this is smart. Let's be honest. I mean, he had a hamstring injury that looked pretty significant. He was clearly very uncomfortable when he left the game on Sunday. You're talking about 4 days later when you've got the rest of the season. We mentioned yesterday that Adam Thielen has not missed a game in 5 years, which is really remarkable as a wide receiver. But the way you keep him healthier for more games this year is by not putting him out there 4 days later with a hamstring that's obviously improved from the day he injured it, but it's still very, very fresh.
All right, so we'll expect to see him hopefully next week. We shall see with Adam Thielen. The question I think probably for people, Mike, is does it mean more good things for Stefon DIggs, or is Diggs sort of locked into where you would have had him projected otherwise?
I think I definitely think there's a target boost here, right? They're going to kind of run that passing game through him. Again, I still have some concerns about the fact that it should be a low volume passing game for Minnesota, especially if Dalvin Cook gets off to a hot start, scores some touchdowns, they build a lead. They're just not going to throw the ball because they don't want to. They want to run the ball. We've seen that all season long. Yes, Diggs has had back-to-back weeks with 20-plus points, but they came against Detroit and Philadelphia. Both of them have been crushed by receivers this season. He's only averaging 9 points per game during weeks 1 through 5 in his other outings this season. So, this is another thing, too, to consider. I mentioned the Redskins' pass defense. Believe it or not, only 2 wide receivers have cleared 76 yards against them this season. Deshaun Jackson and Julian Edelman. I mean, only 2. That's incredible how they've done such a nice job. He's going to see a lot of Quentin Dunbar, who right now is the number 1 rated cornerback at Pro Football Focus. He's been terrific this season. He's really been developing the past few years and has taken a step forward this season. And Josh Norman, of course, on the other side if he's healthy and able to go. So
Is that a good thing, though?
it's what?
Like, is Josh Norman still an effective player?
Yeah, I think he is.
Interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's not as dominant as he once was, but I still think he's a solid
Some
corner.
up and down moments. How
Yeah,
about that?
and even if you get average Josh Norman or even a little below average Josh Norman, you have Dunbar on the other side who's really done a terrific job. I think it seems like an easy matchup. I'm just not so sure it is. Of course, that's going to be offset by a lot of volume, at least a lot of target share, I should say. So I still think he's a top 15 player.
Any other Vikings pass catcher that you feel confidence playing tonight?
If I'm shaky at tight end,
I was just gonna
I would say
say,
Kyle Rudolph, just because, yeah.
Is he worth is it worth a dart throw if you need a tight end this week? To
We-
put
He
we
did
Kyle
score
Rudolph in?
last week, which is good.
Mhm.
Yeah, we saw an uptick in usage with Adam Thielen out, for both him and Irv Smith. Irv Smith, the rookie tight end, very young, but I think he'll be deployed kind of as their slot receiver in this game because you'll have Busy Johnson playing more on the outside. But if I'm shaky at tight end, I mean, Rudolph was droppable in 2 tight end leagues
100%.
2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
but he could be a fill-in option
Right.
this week.
He was rediscovered after Thielen left.
All right, so So we think there's a chance. I mean, I think there's a chance that Kirk Cousins has a very big night tonight. I feel good about Adam Thielen. I feel good about Stefon Diggs. I feel good about Dalvin Cook. Somebody will emerge. I just don't know for sure who is going to be. So tread lightly unless it's Kyle Rudolph as a possible tight end pick. Let's pick this game before we get over to wide receiver and cornerback matchups. I will go with Drum roll, please. Thinking about it. Vikings. Thank you, Daniel.
Wow.
I'm going with the Vikings. How about you, Mike?
Vikings 28, Redskins 15.
Okay, Stephania.
What's the official spread on the game?
16.
Yeah, you're right in there. I'm Vikings.
Yeah, I'm close.
Yeah, Vikings.
Daniel, Vikings for you, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Vikings.
Vikings. Who thinks does anybody think the Redskins will cover besides Mike? Mike thinks they cover. I don't think so. I think no. I think this is a blowout. I'm sorry, Matthew. Actually, no. I'm happy for you, Matthew, because Matthew wants his Redskins to go 1-15. We're going to talk about wide receiver and cornerbacks in just a second. We got to pay the bills first. About a word from ZipRecruiter.
Yes, that's my cue. Hiring can be a slow process. Cafe Altura's COO Dylan Miskowitz needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. So he switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. So you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All righty.
He's a brainiac, he's my clay.
You interrupted my tune.
Sorry about that. I did not mean to do that one there. Moving
You see that
along.
anger come out right there?
I know.
That was my bad. My bad. I know.
Deeply offended. I'm not offended.
Prison Mike.
Wide receiver cornerback matchups presented to you by Prison Mike. And we begin with our IBM Watson Insight of the Week from our friend Kyle Soppe regarding Corey Davis.
Thank you, Phil. Corey Davis has boomed twice in the last month, but IBM Watson isn't quite as optimistic. They only give him a 9% chance to boom this week, which would be over 12.5 points. You guys got another boom game in store for Corey Davis?
Wow, I do. Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill makes his first start with Tennessee last week. Corey Davis puts 6 for 80 and a touchdown on the board on a season-high 7 targets. Even with, even with Marcus Mariota making a chunk of the starts for Tennessee this season, Corey Davis has a 65% catch rate and a 9.3 yards per target. Both of those are very good. So he's playing pretty good ball this season. And now if he gets that consistent target volume and on-target throws from Ryan Tannehill, he can really take a step forward. Why do I like him this week? The matchup against Tampa Bay. Wide receivers against the Bucs this season, second most fantasy points allowed, including the third most to the perimeter, which is where Davis primarily aligns, the second most targets against, the second most receptions, the most receiving yards allowed, and 7 touchdowns. So the Bucs really having a hard time against wide receivers. Corey Davis will see a lot of Carlton Davis, who has probably been their best corner. You have Vernon Hargraves on the other side, the rookie Sean Murphy Bunting in the slot, but all around they have obviously struggled. I think he's in for a pretty nice day at the office.
That would be encouraging. Secondly, a second start for Ryan Tannehill, who I don't know if Ryan Tannehill is playing for the job with this team long term, but it was an interesting change of offensive output. It's good to see Ryan Tannehill.
For a little spark, maybe they got one. They were more productive.
Yes, they sure did.
And that's what we were hoping for, right? Can Tannehill just get the ball to the skill position players? He did that better than Mariota has.
Absolutely. So it's time to go bold sometimes with your picks for wide receiver. Sometimes you got to sort of put your trust behind a guy that maybe not everybody is aware of, could have a massive outing. You think Kenny Stills could have a big, big day for the Houston Texans playing the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, I like him a lot here. Speaking of revenge games, right? The Raiders literally traded one of their starting corners to the team they're playing this week. They
Unbelievable, huh?
Yeah,
That's how desperate they were to get rid of him, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They wanted to get younger at corner. They traded away a 24-year-old corner. Now they're younger at corner. Okay, whatever. Anyway, Raiders, with Karrion Conley, their 5th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, the 2nd most to right perimeter receivers. Why is that important? That is where Conley has played this season, and that includes the most over the past month. So they ship him out, and they replace him with Trayvon Mullen. He is a rookie, and you would expect Houston to go into this game trying to attack that spot. It would make perfect sense, especially because Darryl Worley is on the other side. He's been solid. I mean, he was a day 2 draft pick years ago by Carolina, had some off-field issues, moved on to Oakland, and has kind of stepped forward over the past, we'll say, calendar year in that Raiders defense. So he could very well be he is the number 1 now. He very well could shadow DeAndre Hopkins in this game. If he does, that would put Stills on Mullen a lot in this game. Stills, his last 2 outings, 105 yards and 89 yards. He's filling in for Will Fuller. He played 95% of the snaps last week. He will again in this one. It sets up for potentially a high volume game and a great matchup here against Oakland.
I could have sworn that a while back we said there was a new rule. You can't just have the Philadelphia Eagles cornerbacks as the negative matchup every single week. And yet here we are talking about the Philadelphia Eagle cornerbacks against Smokey John Brown, one of just 2 players in the NFL this season with 50-plus receiving yards in every one of his team's games.
Yeah, we can just roll old tape on this one, right?
Yes, we sure can. That's right.
Yeah, pretty much nothing has changed. Although we can just keep tabulating the production. They've now allowed 7 wide receivers to reach 100 receiving yards against them this season. That is unbelievable. They've already allowed 11 touchdowns to the wide out position. That's 3rd most. Almost 1,400 receiving yards, 2nd most in that category. The most fantasy points to receivers, the most to perimeter receivers, where John Brown aligns most of the time, actually 79% this season. You know, Jalen Mills was back last week. He played solid, but was still heavily targeted. We might see more Ronald Darby as he gets healthier. He was active, but didn't play last week. But Rasul Douglas, we've seen him picked on. I mean, it's just a problem spot. They don't give these guys a lot of help either. John Brown is positioned here for a nice day. I have him ranked 21st at wide receiver. Should be locked in the lineups and a good DFS option.
We need a support group for Mike.
I know, we really do.
You know, it's like every week we're talking about these Eagles cornerbacks, your beloved Eagles cornerbacks.
That hurts.
I feel like we talk about the Arizona
we can get through
Cardinals
this, Mike.
allowing points to the tight ends and the Eagles allowing points to wide receivers.
So, like, we've been talking about this. You and I have both tweeted about it, about Chris Harris and the possibility of the idea of the Eagles targeting him in a trade, which, again, we're not reporting it. We're just trying to tweet it into existence, basically.
Yes, we are.
It makes too much sense, right, for the Denver Broncos to not entertain trades for Chris Harris in the final year of his contract, an effective player. But I believe 30 years old now is Chris Harris. They're more of a rebuilding team. Maybe by this time next week, the Eagles will have done something to address their cornerback spot, and they can be less of the target of your negative cornerback play and positive wide receiver matchup segment that we do every Thursday at this time, which basically just becomes, it's like Mike Clay's mini Festivus.
Yeah, at that point, it'll be like a funnel then, right? Like whoever Harris is covering, there'll be a negative matchup. Everyone else will be like, upgrade the other guy.
That's right.
It's just, it never fails.
All right, on the other side of this video clip from the Fantasy Show, we are going to talk about players who have bad matchups. But first, the aforementioned video. What do you got for us, Daniel?
Hey, Mark, I've been waiting all show for you to talk about that great catch LeBron had on Sunday.
It's Matthew, but listen, boss, actually, it wasn't LeBron, it was Ebron. Ebron made the catch.
Listen, stop saying whatever it is that you're saying and just talk about LeBron, Mark.
Okay. Ebron, or LeBron if you prefer, is only the 5th tight end on the waiver wire show this week.
Boo, you stink, Mark.
Look, my top tight end is actually Chris Herndon. It sounds like Herndon is likely to return in Week 8, and that should give a boost to this entire Jets offense. Last year, Herndon averaged over 10 air yards per target, and from Week 5 on, he was the 9th best tight end in fantasy. If you can't get Herndon or he's already rostered, take a look at Dallas Goedert. Last 2 weeks, Goedert has the 3rd most targets on the Eagles, just 2 behind Zach Ertz, and leads Philly in receiving yards.
Fantasy, you're in the whole 6010. Focus. Fantasy, focus.
In case you missed it, there is just one team in the NFC that is undefeated, not yet scathed, flawless. Just like their favorite fan, the flawless Stephania Bell, who supports her 49ers. 49ers are 6-0. They're also really good at pass defense. Mike, ipso facto, which I believe is Latin for, well, I'm not quite sure, but I think it fits in this context. Don't start DJ Moore.
Is that what that means? Well, I'm not quite sure, but I think it fits in this context.
Yeah.
That's what ipso facto means?
Correct.
Okay.
You nailed it.
I like it.
Did it work? Close? Stefan, you're the smart one here.
No, we're just going to let it.
Ipso facto, which I mean, I think, like, given that,
right.
Here's the takeaway, right?
Yeah, facto. Being
Okay.
fact. Like, it's, yeah.
I'm not, listen, I was a psych major. I don't know this Latin stuff. Mike.
A for effort. Or C for effort.
Are you playing DJ Moore on Sunday against the 49ers?
If I can avoid it, I'm going to. I mean, I have him wide receiver 27. I think I would start him and over Curtis Samuel. Both of these guys have primarily played on the outside for Carolina this season, which means Richard Sherman, means Emmanuel Mosley, or if Akella Witherspoon's back, him. It hasn't really mattered who has aligned at perimeter corner for the Niners. I mean, they've had such a good pass rush. Teams just cannot throw on them so far this season.
What did you say they had? Because that's
you haven't heard that in a while.
It's music to my ears. They have what?
The funny thing about their great pass rush this season is that D Ford is playing like 30% of the snaps.
Yes,
and they're still they've been so terrific in that regard. Obviously, Nick Bosa has been tremendous.
To our ears. Anyway,
but nonetheless, it is translated. Second fewest fantasy points to receivers, third fewest to the perimeter, including the fewest over the past month, and the fewest to the slot as well. So just across the board dominance against wide receivers, the fewest receptions allowed, the fewest receiving yards on a per game basis. And again, DJ Moore, 89% perimeter, Curtis Samuel, 70%. They're going to be up against these guys all day long. They've been effective. It's just a really tough matchup. It's going to be, if you're looking at your lineup and you have them in there, Samuel or Moore, you're going to be a little nervous.
Yeah, the one who worries me is Christian McCaffrey. I know that's not part of the column, but to me, like for the 49ers, he's going to be the most difficult challenge.
Yeah, certainly. He certainly is in most weeks for whoever the Panthers are playing. I am part of a roundtable. I think Mike is too this week. We do it on Tuesdays. It rolls out. And one of the questions every week is a player that you would sit in fantasy and also a fringe player that you would start in fantasy. And I answered DJ Moore. I thought I had reflected my ranking in that. I need to adjust that ranking because I have not much confidence given how good that secondary is, as Mike just laid out. Now, Allen Robinson is the only player in the Bears offense that is even worth watching right now, Mike. He's really, really talented, but he's a bad matchup this week against Casey Hayward.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I have him at wide receiver 18, so I still think he's startable because, we've seen him produce week in and week out, even with their mess of an offense this season in Chicago, as you kind of just pointed out. But it is a tough matchup. The Chargers allowing the 12th fewest fantasy points to receivers. Not as dominant as in the past, but Casey Hayward is still playing at a high level, and he's still shadowing guys on the perimeter. T.Y. Hilton, Marvin Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Corey Davis on nearly every perimeter route they ran against the Chargers. He was on them. It's probably like 95%, somewhere in that vicinity. Allen Robinson does escape to the slot 39% of the time. Casey Hayward's not going to follow him inside, but Desmond King, very good as well. The Chargers' 6th fewest fantasy points to the slot. So if he's outside, he's on Hayward. If he's inside, he's going to be up against King. It is a very tough matchup this season. I'm going to downgrade him again a little bit for that. I think he'd be borderline top 10 in a neutral matchup the way he's been utilized, but in this one, it's closer to 20th. So again, season long, you're still starting him. DFS, I think it's a week to stay away.
You know that Spider-Man meme where it's him pointing at himself?
Yeah.
That's Allen Robinson and Corey Davis. Talented wide receivers who are just completely handcuffed by poor quarterback play.
Yep.
I think Robinson probably is the more polished and better player right now, but the quarterbacks, just both of them, so throughout most of their careers, literally has been bad.
Yeah, and actually it's funny, Corey Davis was shadowed by Hayward last week and actually had a pretty good game. It was one of the rare instances where Hayward had a rough one. So
6 for 80 and a touchdown last week for Corey Davis. Are you forecasting now Allen Robinson 6 for 80 and a touchdown?
I will say under
Under
that.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
Have to take it up with the committee. We shall see.
I would pitch a board bet. I don't think you're taking over 680 and one.
No, I don't think I'm taking over on that one myself. But wide receiver quarterback matchup piece on ESPN Plus right now, available every single week, an essential read. Now, time for a little information, Mike, from you before we get to some social questions.
Yes, from ADT's favorite customer. That's me. Fantasy Focus Football, brought to you by ADT. What does real protection mean for your listeners? You can get all of the latest innovation in smart home security from ADT, combined with 24/7 monitoring from the most trusted name in home security. You get a team of professionals designing and installing a secure smart home just for you and your family. You get 18,000 employees safeguarding them with connection to first responders. You get the nation's #1 smart home security provider. You can get a secure smart home with everything from video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, smart locks, and lights controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice. You can get professionally monitored carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. You can get a system custom designed to fit your home. You can get safety on the go, in the car, or when your kids are at school with the ADT Go app with an SOS button. Support ADT because they support us.
Thank you for that, Mike, and thank you to ADT, our good friends over there. Now we hand it over to the most electric part of the show. Keith, what do you got for us? Not cool, Keith?
Got a handful of questions for you. Ben,
Nice.
Ben wants to know for the rest of the season, can you get a name game for Zach Ertz?
Okay, well, let's call for the drop. Daniel, would you please be so kind? Hit us with the Zach Ertz name game drop.
Does that work? Can I be the one that calls for a name game or no?
You could do that.
First name game.
I'll make Fields into a cranky old man before the end of the year.
People view me as like an exciting young outfield prospect.
You're like a homeless person.
You can get off my lawn.
You use insane ice cream for breakfast logic.
Shout out to Kelly Clarkson, my favorite American Idol of all time.
Stop it.
Yeah, I went there.
Fields insane. It's not just me, right, Daniel Dopp?
Really?
You are drinking the Kool-Aid. You are buying the hype.
Thanks, Dad.
That's half full, Nate. Nate, I called you Nate. I'm punch drunk.
This feels like a no-fly zone to me.
You guys are all... That'll make his way into a name game drop.
Kelly Clarkson is probably the worst call you've had on this entire
Really?
podcast.
Wow. Are you Team Carey or what?
I'm definitely Team Carey, but I love Kelly, but like definitely not the best American Idol of all time.
Did you just go no offense on Kelly Clarkson right there?
Who made the name game drop?
I don't know.
We just assume it's always Lee.
Yeah.
She makes like all of them.
I assume it's Lee Martin.
Yeah. Lee Martin went to Williams. We always shout out that part of it. Nescac love right there. Let me ask you this, Daniel. Is Carrie Underwood a judge on The Voice?
No, she's not.
Is Carrie Underwood, does she have a daily TV show that you can see on NBC CT every day or no?
Does Kelly Clarkson do the Monday Night Football?
No, she does not.
music?
But neither does Kelly. Neither does Carrie Underwood. It's actually Hank Williams.
Sunday.
Dang it. Oh, Sunday.
Technicality win right there.
Stupid.
He's not a company man.
You stupid.
You know what, though? I view them as two outstanding performers. I feel like Kelly has a couple of jams that they transcend. They stretch further than the country music.
I
audience.
agree with you. I only watched one season of American Idol, and it was the first
And
one.
it was that one, of course.
A little biased.
All right.
Did she win or did Justin Guarino win?
No,
Guarini. That's a
Guarini.
little sweet, man. That's a little sweet from those Dr. Pepper's commercials.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's the sweet one.
Wow, that's really good. That was amazing.
So good. Wait, we have to save that.
Please, hey, Kenny, will you cut that video and please send it to me so we can distribute it on social
Wait,
media?
that's Justin Guarini? He's still kicking around?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Kicking around is probably the best way to put it.
Wait a minute, nothing else matters right now except for that.
I know. That
was
bit
really
of
good.
knowledge was amazing.
Not even that.
And then
Jason
the
is better.
performance.
Yeah, the performance.
I know.
Zach Ertz name game. We begin here. I will say the
mic
name.
drop
You guys
that.
have the opportunity to choose Zach Ertz or somebody else. I'm going to start at the top. Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz?
Kelsey.
Travis Kelce. I'm sorry, Zach Ertz or George Kittle?
Kittle.
You guys are like in unison
I
too.
know.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz
40.
or Evan Ingram?
Evan Ingram.
Zach Ertz or Hunter Henry?
Henry.
Whoa. Zach Ertz or
How about Hooper and Andrews?
Austin Hooper?
I'm still on Hooper.
Wow, geez, I can't even speak. Zach Ertz or Mark Andrews?
Mark Andrews.
Really?
I'm
okay.
a little hesitant on that one.
Okay.
Kind of in between, but probably
Zach Ertz
Andrews for volume.
or Darren Waller?
Waller.
I'm getting no help here.
The only ones I would like, you have to go lower. Like I would say,
Okay.
if you start going Zach Ertz or Greg Olson, I would go Zach Ertz.
I think we just drew the line, though.
Zach-
That's
Didn't
the
we
line.
just,
That
we
is
just drew
the
the line
line.
right there.
I think there is a big 8 right now. Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, Hooper, Andrews, Henry, Ingram.
And he's the
and
bottom
Ertz
of
is
it.
at the
Yeah.
bottom of it. And then
Yeah.
there's a drop off.
That's where I think the name game kind of becomes counterproductive. Like, rather it's just like, let's just, on wide receivers and running backs, I think it makes more sense. But tight ends, it's like, it's such a small position group that just
Yeah.
like, everybody who's not
couple
named
on
this
the-
guy, pass
Yeah,
him down.
like Kyle put up on the board Gerald Everett, who's interesting because he's got, but no, right, but I mean, like he's somebody where you're like, oh, you know.
Yeah, he's like the top of the next tier. But there are a lot of people wondering, should I, okay, Ertz's value is down right now. Should I trade and get him because he's going to be an elite tight end one again the rest of the way? I don't think so. I think he's right in this tier of a lot of guys we just talked about, and I like a lot of them more. So I think he is now settled in as a mid-range tight end one. He's just dealing with tough coverage. You're seeing more Dallas Goedert involved in the offense. Deshaun Jackson's going to be back soon. I think that's kind of where he's settled in now.
Okay. What else, Keith?
Next one comes from Alec. Says, I need help before tonight's game. Terry McLaurin or Chase Edmonds this week?
So David Johnson did not practice yesterday. The team did sign Zach Center. The team did sign Alfred Morris. So there is some writing
Matthew
on the
noticed.
wall, so to speak.
Yeah.
Suggesting that David Johnson might not play, Stephania.
I got to, you have to have a little bit of trust issues because here's the thing. David Johnson wanted to give it a shot. Kingsbury said, we let him, give it a shot. That he didn't have a setback in the game, but he just effectively could not go.
Right.
And if that happens out of the gate, you're a little more reluctant to trust him the next week. Now, that being said, look what happened with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper played 3 snaps and had to come out when his quad was still bothering him. And they were like, okay, but this week we think he's really good. And he was fine. So, again, watch practice, but him not practicing at the start of the week, you start not feeling great about it. So I think I'd lean toward, Chase Edmonds.
But it's still a good question.
Right.
McLaurin?
Right. No, but I'm saying I would lean toward Chase Edmonds getting the heavier volume of work as of today. But
yeah, it's a tough call. I think I would probably wait it out unless like David Johnson practices today and it looks positive. But I think I would wait it out. And then if for some reason David Johnson does play, then you could just find someone. I'm sure you have someone on your bench you could file on, but I would wait it out.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Mike, that you just said right there. But I would lead towards Edmonds. It's a really tough matchup on Sunday against the Saints, but passing game volume. If like Zach Zinner gets cut tomorrow, which they could do, then maybe you'd like be kicking yourself a little bit. But I think it's going to wind up being Chase Edmonds as the starter on Sunday, or playing at least
don't you think
a prominent role.
He's earned himself.
Yeah.
Like that game, he earned himself some more volume too, I think.
Do you think that and I was not here yesterday, so you may have had this conversation, but like.
Wait, you didn't listen?
I downloaded. Do you think that he is like Austin Eckler light? I mean, not Austin Eckler, because he's definitely not Austin Eckler.
I'm not sure he's that much inferior to Austin Eckler.
Right.
I mean, he's a good player.
See it more.
I mean, he's a good player, though. He's averaging 6+ yards a carry out of Austin Eckler. He's a better runner than Austin Eckler. He's not a better receiver than Austin Eckler, though. He's a good player, though. I think he's done enough to earn a consistent role in this offense.
Yeah, and where Eckler does a lot of his damage as a pass catcher, whereas David Johnson has done most of his in that regard as well. So I think when he comes back, he'll kind of file right back into that role. And listen, maybe this has changed, but last week I asked in our column that comes out every Saturday morning, I asked 32 fantasy questions to each of our NFL Nation reporters, and I kind of suggested, could Chase Edmonds playing well lead to a larger role? Could he start to take away some of them touches from David Johnson? Now, again, this was before last week, but Josh Weinfuss, who covered the team, kind of shot it down quickly. Like, this is David Johnson's backfield. Now, again, maybe that changes after last week, but for now, I would be nervous about Edmonds being like, okay, got an RB2 the rest of the way. I'd be worried about him going back to 30% snap share.
Keith?
We're going to finish up with the Ty Johnson portion of the program. We've had a bunch of questions in the chat. So
did Daniel submit them all?
I was like, burner account possibly.
Okay.
Nothing here says Daniel, but a couple questions. One is from Q, who wants to know, do I play Kenny Stills or Ty Johnson?
I would go with Ty Johnson, but it's pretty close.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd probably go with Kenny Stills. I'm just not convinced with Detroit running backs. They haven't done enough to consistently earn my thing. And they love Kenny Stills.
Yeah.
And I think with Will Fuller out, Kenny Stills is going to have enough volume to make him.
It's close, so I'll usually break the tie with more volume, and that's going to be the running back for sure. Also, they signed Paul Perkins off the practice squad. They didn't sign like an impact back or trade for one, which tells me at least this week it should be 16, 18 touches for Ty Johnson. So I think I would lean that way.
Would you like a 1-week board bet arrangement, Stephania? Kenny Stills versus Ty Johnson?
Sure.
Okay. I say Ty Johnson will score more fantasy points than Kenny Stills in Week 8.
I say Kenny Stills will earn more fantasy points than Ty Johnson in Week 8.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
That, Mike Clay, is how it's done.
I like how proper Stephania is. He'll earn more.
B minus.
Kenny Stills will earn
so you lose
more.
some points for that.
That's Ivy League,
Okay.
Everything is earned.
That's above me.
right?
I don't know.
He'll earn. What do you say?
Score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
Peasants
normal.
say score, Mike. Elitists say earn.
Apparently. Yeah, I just got earned my place here.
Peasants.
People that live in Northeast Ohio, everything is earned. So LeBron says,
yeah,
Kenny Stills going to earn more points this week.
Come up
than
the hard way, Mike. Some of us had to, forge our own path.
Okay.
So we earned it.
Okay.
Not like you.
All right.
Had
Listen,
everything
I went.
handed to
Listen,
you.
I went to a D2 school when I got here. So, by the way, shout out Craig Reynolds. Kutztown University running back was signed by the Redskins this week to help replace Chris Thompson. So
Mike, we had a whole Redskins game preview, and you didn't mention it at all there.
I just thought of it.
Oh
okay.
my God.
Wow, you're really proud alum, huh?
I know.
I mean,
really.
every chance I get to shout out Bill Belichick or Lin-Manuel Miranda from Wesleyan, I do it.
Listen, I got it in. It's
you got it in like
10:49. The pod's still going. We're covered.
To finish up the Ty Johnson portion, Carter wants to know for the rest. I think this is for the rest of the season, but are you trusting Ty Johnson? With carry on out.
I can't say right now. I can't.
Yeah.
How could I say with
typical non-committal men? They're only going to vote for him for 1 week.
Well, then tell us how it's done. Much like the board bet, show us how it's done.
Well, I would say
he's earned Stefania's trust already.
No, he has not earned my trust because no Detroit Lions running back has earned my trust for a half season. It just hasn't been there. So, no.
All right, Stefania's planted her flag. I need more time because I am non-committal.
Again.
I think the Lions need more time. I think that's why you signed Paul Perkins to see how it goes this week and then maybe make a decision next week when the trade deadline comes around, or you shop around for a guy like Jay Ajayi or whoever might be out there. Could look Eric Blunt come back, or there's guys out there they could potentially bring in.
Some names to consider. Yeah,
you're going there.
Let's keep our eyes on. There's 5 days now to the NFL trade deadline. A lot of action took place.
Right.
Could take place. So I think Stephania might prove to be correct on her assessment of Ty Johnson. But if he goes out there and the Lions win 72-0 on Sunday and he runs for 400 yards, maybe I'll win. Maybe I'll be the smart guy, the wise guy, the person who knows.
These Thursday pods seem to be. They have been, knock on wood or fake wood.
That's real.
Yeah,
weathered.
That's why it's foam. It like dents in when I knock on it.
Come on.
By the way, I made the DK Metcalf call on this Thursday pod. The Thursday pods have been, forget Sunday Red Zone. That thing's I'm in the tank. But Thursday, my predictions so far have played out. I know Daniel doesn't want to hear that about his Lions.
That's okay. No, I think I'm with you. I think once we get past the trade deadline, I'll have the sense of where I'm at more on Ty Johnson.
Yep.
So, all right, that's it. You know what? Mike Clay and I are going to stick around after this. We're going to do a DFS podcast with our buddy Al Zeidenfeld. So maybe if you want to play some DFS, stick around, click on the next podcast that pops up in the feed.
Is Ty Johnson on your DFS list?
DFS CSS.
He is a guy that you maybe could consider, but I don't think that I would this week.
Okay.
Huge thank you again to our guests for being here today. They're your guests, Mike. You can say thank you if you'd like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you to Zach Novak and Kelsey Novak for coming in. Congratulations again to Zach.
Congratulations to Zach. Zach has taken all of us out to many lucrative dinners with his winnings. We appreciate that loyalty right there, Zach. I've only known you for an hour and a half, but you seem like a super generous person. We're back on Friday with a full preview of the weekend ahead. Lots of stuff to get to. And if you watch the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus, here's some good news. It's getting a makeover today. Seriously, some are calling it what will be the most anticipated and best episode ever. The reason why? Matthew's not on it. Instead, me and Daniel Dopp are hanging out and bringing you all the content that you need with a possible cameo from Mike Clay and maybe, just maybe, not confirmed, but maybe Brad Pitt. You'll have to find out on ESPN Plus. Brad Pitt might be there. That right there is what we call a tease in the business. Talk to you guys on Friday. Peace out.
He's a NASCAR guy with a basement shrine, a Langford fan for life. Chargers are off to a terrible start, but that won't change his mind. Matching up all the cornerbacks, touchdown regression and weekly stats. But if your team falls flat, he's the one to blame.